Unstable marriage. Hello, marriage community. This will be a long post, so I appreciate anyone who takes the time to engage with it. I'll answer questions and give more detail as needed in the comments. My wife and I love each other very much. We have been together since mid-2019 and married in late 2021. We've shared a, mostly, wonderful life together. For context, I am from the US, and she is from Hong Kong, noting this as cultural differences definitely play a role. I have a diagnosed mental disorder, Tourette's, and she has an undiagnosed mental disorder. She believes she is autistic, though I also suspect something like bipolar disorder. 95% of our life is bliss. We get along well, align on most aspects of life, and have shared countless adventures. From the outside, we seem like the perfect couple, but beneath the surface, we have some major struggles. My wife is the most dedicated person I have ever met. Every day, I come home excited to see her, and she runs to the door like a puppy to greet me with a hug. It's the highlight of my day. She is intelligent, loyal, independent, and stands up for what she believes in. We balance each other out well. She's high-strung, while I'm more laid-back, sometimes too laid-back, as I tend to let people walk over me when I shouldn't. I've shared some of the best moments of my life with her, but also some of the worst. She takes great care of me. She wakes up early to pack my lunch for work, cooks dinner every night, and handles shopping, cleaning, and trip planning, all while working 4 days a week. I love how devoted she is, but I constantly tell her to do less. I've reassured her that she doesn't need to wake up at 6:30 a.m. just to put my lunch in a bag, but she insists, saying I'll forget something if she doesn't. When I remind her that it's my responsibility, she still refuses to stop. At one point, she became upset, saying she never gets to sleep in and snapped at me for waking her up. I acknowledged my noisy morning routine and stopped listening to my podcast in the shower. Despite that, she still gets up at 6:30 a.m. She also gets stressed over chores. I've suggested hiring a maid. We can afford it, but she doesn't like the ones we've hired and always ends up letting them go. If I mention this, she gets upset, saying I make her sound difficult. Like clockwork, my wife has a major meltdown every 4 months or so. It's predictable. Whenever I catch myself thinking, wow, she's been great lately, I know an explosion is coming within a week. The first meltdown happened shortly after she moved from Hong Kong to Beijing to live with me. It was a 3-day weekend, and she found a cheap trip she wanted us to take. I was excited at first, but things quickly took a turn for the worse. The first leg of the trip was supposed to take 4 hours, but holiday traffic meant it took that long just to get out of the city. We arrived at 2 a.m., only to leave again at 5 a.m. Then I learned that the tour had changed destinations, and we wouldn't even be going where she originally wanted. For the first time in my life, I cut a trip short, saying I couldn't handle it. We stayed behind while the bus continued without us. This was when I saw my wife transform into someone else for the first time. She became catatonic, lying in bed unresponsive. Eventually, we got up and walked outside, but she grew more upset by the minute. Suddenly, she collapsed in the middle of the street, crying and yelling. It was a holiday, and taxis were hard to find, but a kind stranger took pity on us and drove us to the train station. The entire ride, she screamed at customer service on the phone, accusing them of kidnapping us. I tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. When we got home, she told me she was leaving and going back to Hong Kong. It was so sudden. I had never seen anyone behave this way. I broke down crying, begging her not to go. I rarely cry, but as soon as she saw me in tears, she transformed back into her usual self, hugging and kissing me. She stayed. I can't remember all the times she has had these transformations, but here are a few that stand out. The homestay incident. She planned an expensive homestay trip. That morning, I felt sick but spent a couple of hours gaming with my brother. Weekend mornings were my only chance to connect with family due to time zone differences. I realized too late how bad I felt and told her I wanted to skip lunch and go straight to the homestay. She immediately canceled the entire trip, stayed mad for 48 hours, and refused to reschedule even when I felt better. She later left to stay in a hotel, saying she was leaving me. She returned the next day, and life went back to normal. But even years later, just mentioning this incident can set her off. Dinner with a friend. I planned dinner at one of my wife's favorite restaurants and invited a mutual friend. The friend was flaky and said she'd be late. I gave my wife the choice of waiting or going without her. My wife became furious, accusing me of inviting the friend because I didn't want to be alone with her, which was somewhat true. I feared her lashing out at strangers when it was just us. This happened the day before our anniversary, and she declared it ruined because she assumed I'd cancel the anniversary. She stayed mad for a day until I surprised her with a romantic dinner and her favorite, freshly shucked oysters. The Dresden question. While job hunting, I casually asked her opinion on living in Dresden. She instantly threw her phone, started yelling, and exploded over me, even asking. Cutting out friends. When I first met my wife, she had a friend who we went out to dinner with. She even tried to hook me up with this friend before I started dating my wife. As time went on, I noticed my wife's attitude change towards her friend, and one day her friend was messaging her and she suddenly responded, "I honestly don't care about you," or something like that. I was shocked. Her friend even sent an email asking for an explanation, which my wife ignored. This still bothers me to this day. My wife had two friends visit us at our new home in the Middle East. They were both kind of weird and not very thoughtful. The first one, she got upset at me because I wanted to give the friend a ride. He was a hitchhiker with no money, and I was tired of guessing when and where he would be. She said the friend would be the reason my wife and I get divorced, blocked him, and I had to message him and tell him he couldn't stay with us as planned. Her second friend came to visit us, was weird about money, and she unfriended him after the trip. The family visit in Hong Kong. My wife was estranged from her family when we met. I encouraged her to reconnect, and we spent Chinese New Year with them. Things seemed fine, until we returned home, and she started screaming at her mom over money meant for jewelry, accusing her of theft. They haven't spoken since 2023. She also stopped talking to one of her brothers, despite having no prior issues with him. Our U.S. vow renewal. This is the biggest one for her now. It's so long and detailed, I'll add the details as a separate comment. Suffice to say, my wife is furious at my entire family, thinks they wronged her, and threatens divorce when I want to go home for 1 month in the summer. I just asked her a week ago if it was okay for me to go home for a month this summer, and she said it was fine. I asked her again for confirmation a few days ago. She said yes and booked the tickets. I told her I don't want a repeat of last summer where we agreed I'd go home for a month, and then she complained the whole summer, threatening divorce. Here's the worst one for me. About a week ago, we had a wonderful weekend. We went to one of our favorite restaurants for dinner, went camping on a beautiful beach for the weekend, and then I drove her about an hour to get oysters and shucked them all for her. I really felt like things were perfect. Then, on the way out to have dinner with some friends, I grabbed a cheap plastic brush my wife had bought me for sweeping sand out of our car. As I walked up to the car to put it away, I brushed some dust off the bumper. My wife yells at me that it's not for use on the outside of the car. I said it's for wiping sand. What does it matter? And brushed a little more. My wife was upset and got out of the car. I wasn't surprised because whenever we are going to see people, she is more likely to blow up. What did surprise me was that when I came home from dinner, a dinner she admitted not wanting to go to, she had locked me out. I started pounding on the door and texting her because I needed to use the bathroom. I had no idea if she would let me in or if I'd have to go get a hotel. I didn't have my clothes or anything for work the next day. She finally let me in without saying anything. I was extra upset because I felt like I'd taken special care of her that day, and she was overreacting over a stupid plastic brush. I went into the bathroom and slammed the door. When I came out, she had locked herself in the guest bedroom. She often does this when angry, or locks me out of the main bedroom and wouldn't respond. Whatever, I was angry too. I took all my clothes and passport down to my car so she couldn't do anything to them. She's thrown my stuff around the room before when angry. I took the lock chain off the door and took the key so she couldn't lock me out. When I came home the next day, she was still locked in her room. Fine. I went back to my normal routine until about 9 p.m. I noticed that she hadn't eaten dinner or gotten water since I got home around 3 p.m. I hadn't heard anything from her, and she had blocked me on Messenger and wouldn't answer my calls. I started to get worried as she had mentioned self-harm in the past, but I also knew this was normal for her to stay angry for 24 to 48 hours. I pounded on the door. "Are you alive?" No response. I pounded on the door for a minute in case she had headphones on. Make some noise to let me know you're okay. Nothing. Hang up on this call if you're okay. I call her. It rings and rings. I'm starting to get worried. I know there's a 95% chance she's okay, but I started to imagine she had done something to herself. I tell her 3 times I'm going to call maintenance to bust the lock unless you let me know you're okay. Finally, I called maintenance. 3 guys show up and start pounding on the door for about 10 minutes. They make enough noise to wake the dead, and still no response from my wife. I'm really starting to get worried and wondering if I should have called the police. As soon as they break the lock, my phone rings. It's my wife. You're scaring me. I've called the police. I couldn't believe it. I felt like she'd played a trick on me. I go outside and wait for the police. They show up and were amazing. Friendly, patient, and understanding. They see my wife is having a mental health crisis and try to talk her down. I hear her berating the police, "You're late. Don't laugh." Then she says I'm violent and my blood turns cold. What if she lies, tells them I hit her? I could go to jail, lose my job, lose my whole career. We'd both lose our home. Fortunately, she tells the truth and leaves for a hotel. The next day she calls me and apologizes profusely. I take her home and we're back to normal. As it stands, she's away on holiday and coming home tonight. She's already said she's going to lock herself in her room because she's mad at my family again. She's mentioned divorce again. After she agreed I can go home for a month, she's changed her mind and telling me I need to cancel the $1,200 ticket I just bought. I am just so tired and worn out. I know it's not really about what I do, and she'll always have something to be mad about. She uses her anger as a weapon to hurt others, including me. She has hit me before, thrown things, screamed in my ear, mocking my Tourette syndrome, locked me out of the house, and threatened to lock me out other times. She admits she wants to hurt me when she's angry. I know she is a scared little girl at heart who's gone through a lot of tough things in her childhood, but she hurts me repeatedly and doesn't really think much of it. This is only a fraction of our history, but I'm struggling to make sense of it all. I love my wife, but these unpredictable explosions are exhausting. I don't know how to navigate them, especially since life is otherwise wonderful. Any advice would be deeply appreciated.